congratulations on this.
Thanks. Yeah.
It's a really, I found it a really sweet, interesting movie that was completely not what I thought it was going to be. I'd read the synopsis of what it was going to be. I try not to read too much going in because I like to see things fresh. And it had way more to do with real interpersonal relationships than it did with the fantasy, for my money anyway.
Absolutely.
And that's what made it resonate with me. I think if this had been a straight-up fantasy, it wouldn't have worked as well. Tell me a little bit about finding that tone, and if that tone was there from sort of the beginning, or if it developed over time.
I certainly, it was there in the words, and I think that is what Zoe was going for and what she was interested in. I think that she was... There's a line in the film where my brother says, you haven't written a person, you've written a girl. And I think that idea, what it's like to really explore a relationship between two people versus the sort of fantasized idea of what a relationship is, especially in movies even. So I think that was an area that she was trying to play in as a writer. And I think that's what made me, aside from her being my girlfriend, when you first start reading the script, I could have actually felt... Sometimes you have to be supportive, or you might feel like, oh, if we want to do this together, we have to do it together. I started reading what she was writing and got really excited about it. And I think 10 to 15 pages in, I suggested that John and Val, we should send it to them, because tonally, letting something be very funny, but also having a certain amount of depth to it, or heart to it, or not being afraid of that side of it too, I just thought they would be perfect. And my favorite thing in a movie or a book or an actor that I like is being surprised. The people who bring something unexpected to what they do, so where you're sitting in the theater, that feeling is probably what gets me off the most as a viewer. So I'm sure we were... It's great to hear that you were surprised by the film in some way, because I think that's... I really like that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's human nature, but, I tend to try and think, it's going to be Harvey with elements of a romantic comedy, and, going in, you let these things roll around in your head a little bit, and it's not that. It's not that, and there's a great scene, and I don't want to give anything away, but there's a great scene where you are displaying your control over her. And, at first, the very first sort of change that she makes, I thought, the audience doesn't know whether to laugh yet or not, because the tone has been light-ish up until that point. And then you see that within that scene, you see the phases of relationships, how controlling and stuff. But it was interesting to see your reaction to it, because you were hating it as it was happening. And it was a nice moment where there's a lot going on, but you're not really saying that much in that scene. And I liked that we learned about you and Calvin's character without a great deal of dialogue in that.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of a self-destructive action, and you kind of have to go down below zero in order to resurrect yourself at that point and to recover. I think that's really the only choice, and it was something that we discussed. How dark can we go here? And if we don't, are we just making the fantasy version that you spoke of that maybe isn't as interesting or doesn't really speak to a reality of a relationship? So that felt like the only choice to us to get to that place. And the film surprised me as we were making it. I mean, that scene was in the script and what leads up to it, but I think Zoe and I having a real relationship, playing two other people, but probably personal feelings coming to it as well, the script had more depth than even I anticipated, and the scenes took on a life that I almost didn't fully anticipate either, especially in the last third of the film.
Well, it's interesting because you are a real-life couple, so that brings with it challenges, I guess, working together and that sort of thing. But it also, does it lead to any kind of self-examination or no when you're doing this? Am I reading too much into this?
Well...
Because this film is unique, being written, written and performed by a couple, written by one half of the couple, performed by the couple.
I think probably when I go to work, Calvin the character is my cipher, and I'm really not looking at it as what parts of me is Zoe using and what parts of ex-boyfriends or, characters that she's read in literature and whatever. I look at the basic facts. Okay, his dad has passed away. He had a long relationship that's ended. He's lonely, got a dog to try and meet people. His brother's his only friend. You start with literally the big basics that were given to you and then go from there. So it felt like a whole new creation to me, even though I had read it the whole time. While Zoe was writing it, once I started working on the character, you kind of go back to square one and say, what did the writer give you? And I think after working together, certainly our relationship has we went through something together. We went through something very intimate, challenging, something that we really cared about together. So certainly we learned something about each other through it and after it. I don't know where the two go together, though.
It's like your first baby.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, when we were at work, we both care so much about what we do. We were focused on this, I wasn't thinking about us. I mean, I'm sure it was in the work naturally and all that, but yeah, it was very easy to go to work together. Driving home from work wasn't always easy, but at work together was easy.
I asked you this last night, and I'll just touch on it again. Yeah. The Calvin in the movie finds success very early on, as did you. Did you relate to that part of it? Because it's difficult as a teen to suddenly be thrust into a world that most of us don't understand. Did you bring something of your own experience to that?
I think so. I think that's something that I really related to, the idea of success and trying to follow up on it and keep the bar at a certain level, and especially what other people expect of you. And something that I do think about a lot is how much other people determine what success is for you, which I think is true for a lot of people in the world, and I think it's not a good thing. I think to figure out what makes you happy is one of the hardest things that we have to come to terms with, because it's not always what other people value as success. So that's I do like those issues, and I care about them, and I think about them and reflect on them. And I think the same is true for our directors, John and Val, who made Little Miss Sunshine as their first film that did very well. Didn't make another film for 6 years, so that's something that the three of us, without Zoe, sometimes talked about, just our relationship to that. And the creative process, I think, the film is about two people in a relationship, but I also think there are themes and elements of the creative process in there that I enjoy.